You could have given me a countdown.
3, 2, 1, action.
Okay, start over.
Cut!
Cut.
I can cut it out and edit it. Go.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Garrett Talbert. Along with my partner, Chelsey Williams, we bring you the Solano College Sports Network studio. Wait, what? Okay, you got to cut that.
Action. Go.
You a mess. I swear you are. I don't care what y'all doing.
Go.
Just do.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Garrett Talbert. Along with my partner, Chelsey Williams, broadcasting from the Solano College Sports Network studio, we bring you College Football Weekly. And today what we're going to be talking about is some teams we've had our ups and downs, surprise-wise, over the season, as we are down to the last weekend of the regular season. Give you the Heisman watch. It's really barreled down to 3 favorites going into the last weekend. And we're going to give you our title picks as all the championship games, conference championship games are happening tonight and tomorrow. And we're going to give you a national title pick as at least projected Notre Dame to play Alabama or Georgia, the winner of the SEC title game. And we'll give you a pick of who we think is going to win that. So, Chelsey, who do you think, who has been your really bad surprise team this year?
Bad really is actually Baylor, because you have a Heisman candidate with an RG3 who wins the Heisman, goes off to Washington, is doing a lot of work, damage all over Washington. And so you have to, compare all his stats, all his, accolades within Baylor year after, just a couple months. And then he's just Baylor's just going all south. They had a couple good wins. They did that surprising win over Kansas when they needed that win the most. They do that, they win over Kansas. And then after that, just from the start of the season to the middle and then their critical games, they've been losing all those critical games. And it's just really sad to see, Baylor go out like that, after just 1 year. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah, you got a point there, Baylor. They had definitely their ups last season with RG3 at the quarterback position last year. But I'm going to have to go a different path. Team that was actually ranked #1 in the polls before the season started.
That one, okay.
And they're not even ranked as we speak. And I'm going to have to go with the USC Trojans. And I think that just says it right there. So much to look for. Matt Barkley coming back for his senior season. He was their first year off their 2-year probation, I think it was. And, Matt Barkley wanted to come back after they had such a good season last year. Himself had such a good season last year. They thought they can come back and produce that again this year. Everyone knew that Oregon was going to be good. But then once they had that loss in their 3rd game against Stanford, that's when you saw it all going downhill. Yeah, it still took them a while to get their 2nd loss against Arizona. But, there's just a lot of things brewing, and as of just yesterday, Monty Kiffin, Lane Kiffin's father, longtime defensive coordinator under Lane Kiffin, resigned. Rumors saying he's trying to go, not leaving coaching in general. He's trying to work his way back into the NFL. So things falling apart for the USC Trojans as, we saw them play against UCLA, and they had the backup quarterback, Max Whittick, at the helms, and they just didn't look very good. Their defense not good at all, as we see them getting trampled over the past couple weeks. And to me, USC has just not been, what we all thought. Is a lot of people had them in a national title game. And a lot of people, I guess you can say this is kind of a bad surprise team too, but they're still, ranked. They're somewhere in the top 15 as Oklahoma too, as they're 10-2, but definitely not as bad a surprise as USC has been. But that's my pick for me.
Yeah, I can agree with you on the USC, because it's the first game with Hawaii, they were 49, 10-49. Second game, 42-21. It's you have your whole first games are always high and stuff like that. But with USC and Stanford, they can never win them. Within Barkley too, when he plays them, he always just gives up something. It's either an interception, a fumble on the or he just loses himself. In most of the games that they played with him, they weren't even at their Stanford's home. It's he gets, I don't know, I think Stanford's just their jinx. and like they lose that one, and then as soon as they lose that one, everybody loses hope in them, and they slowly lose hope within themselves. And it's like they win a couple easy games, but the critical games they should be winning, they lose, and it's just kind of sad. I can agree with you, like, you know, in a large extent with Stanford, you know, USC, because that was my team too. I was hoping they would just, you know, go to a BCS, you know, from rags to riches, that kind of story, but I feel you.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people, it would have been that really feel-good story, you know, if they come back in their first year off their probation, they go to a BCS bowl, and like I said earlier, a national title game at that. A lot of people had them going to. Would have been a real feel-good story, even if they didn't win that game. But now it looks like they're just going to one of those minor bowls that are going to be some in some random spot in the country. So USC just really not been that good at all this year. Yeah, they had their ups early in the season, but Matt Barkley also injuring himself in the UCLA game, and he just may have hurt his NFL stock, as he is projected maybe not to go number 1 overall, but he's definitely projected to be the best quarterback going into next year's draft. So USC, my bad surprise team of the year. Who do you got as your good surprise team of the year?
Well, personally, like within like California, within our personal division, like the Mountain West, I have Fresno State, for the fact that they're like last year they were 4-9, and with their like previous coach that's been there for like since the 70s. I can't really recall, but like him, like, you know, ending off his like personal season before he retires as 4-9, and then like you have a coach from Texas A&M come in and then just lift him up to 9-3. That's a big leap for Fresno State. So I show a lot of love to Fresno State with that one, and they're just drastic change, I feel, Fresno State.
Yeah, Fresno State's been pretty good this year. You know, that the record they have is Boise State in the same conference. You know, they have pretty much the identical records. It's just Boise has played one less game, as they're playing their final game of the season tomorrow against University of Nevada, Reno. Mm-hmm. But a record that's very similar. Fresno has not been able to climb up in the rankings. Who knows why? But you know, I guess you got to go with the obvious surprise pick for me, and you got to go with Notre Dame, as obviously they're now ranked number 1 in the BCS standings, looking like they punched their ticket to the January 7th BCS national title game in Florida. So, you know, you got to go with there. You know, personally, I really do not think Notre Dame would be competitive. Yeah, they'd have their wins in easy games like Wake Forest, Boston College, Navy. You know, but once they, you know, a lot of people, you know, yeah, they were undefeated. A lot of people, oh yeah, it's good for Notre Dame, especially when they got to that Oklahoma game. Mm-hmm. Then they just stomped all over Oklahoma, and everyone thought, you know, this is where we find out if Notre Dame's for real or not. And that's when really Notre Dame really punched it to the mouth of the world, saying that Notre Dame's for real. And their outstanding defense. And Monte Teo, Heisman candidate. He's one of the top 3 candidate for the Heisman Award. But you know, if you want to go a less obvious pick for me, you gotta go with kind of what you did, and you gotta kind of stay local. You gotta go the San Jose State Spartans. Oh yeah. Climbing to the rankings, they are now in the top 25. Not ranked at all this year. They are 10-2, and they've just looked phenomenal. I've watched them over the years. You know, they don't have a lot of nationally televised games, but I watched them play USC, as USC had their opener. It wasn't last season, I believe it was the season before, and they just looked horrible. You know, San Jose just the Spartans not really known for their football in general, so I really got to go with the Spartans. If you want to go a less obvious pick, obviously the obvious pick is Notre Dame. Yeah. If you want to stay something that's a little less obvious, you got to go with the San Jose State Spartans, being in the WAC, a conference previously dominated by Boise State. Mm-hmm. Boise State being in their 2nd season in the Mountain West Conference. So to me, that's where you got to look if you want to go there. Is the San Jose State.
I feel San Jose because they actually had a couple of NFL stars that went to San Jose State. So just seeing how it takes them a long time to like rebuild and come back, and them just, you know, coming back so strong this year. Yeah, I'm very surprised for San Jose as well. So yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, so now on to our next segment, Chelsey. We're going to talk about now the Heisman countdown, as the Heisman votings has really, brought down the 3 candidates. There's still others that are, I guess you could say, a little bit in the mix, but the really 3 are the quarterback Johnny Manziel from Texas A&M, Monte Te'o, defensive end from Notre Dame, and quarterback Colin Klein from Kansas State. Those are really what it's really boiled down to as we get down to the last weekend of the season. And if you were a Heisman voter, who would get your vote?
I'm kind of sad how I don't see an Oregon player, because I love the Oregon, running backs and stuff like that. Kenyon Barner, like in the beginning, he's just getting all the rage and stuff, but now he's like all in the back burner after that loss with Notre Dame. But within Notre Dame, I like Te'o. I'm sorry, I love him. Even though I'm not a big fan of, Notre Dame, just him alone, he brings out the full fire of, like, all the stuff that Notre Dame was going through. And just to see him, like, constantly in this winning streak, and, like, I love it when the camera is always on him, like, near the fourth quarter, like, near, like, the do or die parts, and when they win, and, like, how he yells, like, he brings out the full fire. And so just him, his playing style, and everything. But Johnny Football, you're going crazy with all those good deep passes. You're accurate. You're just everything, like, people want within a quarterback. So it's really hard to tie it in. But, like, if I had to put it in my vote, I might put in for Te'o. Like, I love him that much.
Yeah, you got a solid point there, and you really want you got Te'o, Manziel, and Klein. Klein was the favorite as Kansas State once they got their first loss. That's when he really dropped off the charts. He's had some injury issues. He missed a game earlier in the season. Who knows if he makes that game? Maybe he performs real well and his Heisman goes up. And I really gotta, if I were to really cast my vote, I think I'd have to go with Te'o also. Mm-hmm. Just the fact that I always, in my personal opinion, I think the way your team performs, because it's the Heisman is really your, best player. Whether you see your MVP awards in professional sports, that's where at least you tend to see whether your team makes the playoffs or not, really contradict if that's going to help you win that MVP or not. To me, that plays a big role in MVP voting in pro sports. Mm-hmm. And the Heisman, I think it could help because, your best player, and, what if a player was performing at Te'o standards, but his team was performing at Colorado standards? Yeah, see, that's what you got to throw in. The way your team, exactly. Yeah, it's just the way the team performs. It's a big reason. All 3 teams there, Kansas State, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M, all phenomenal teams this year, all ranked within the top 10 of the BCS as we speak. And my vote would have to go to Monte Te'o. Just the fact that he's performed so well. Some would argue with my pick, though. Just the fact that Jarvis Jones of Georgia, linebacker from Georgia, a lot of people say he's the best defensive player in the country. And when it comes draft time next year, he'll be drafted over Monte Te'o. And, when it comes to defensive players, there's only been one ever defensive player to win the Heisman. And his name is also the famous Charles Woodson, now a defensive back of the Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. Only defensive player ever to win this, and me personally, I'd love to see another defensive player win it. The way Te'o's been performing this year, he definitely deserves it. All 3 players deserve to win. All 3 players should get the invite to New York to be one of those 5 candidates sitting in that front row in New York, hoping to hear their name called. But when all comes said and done, my vote would go to Te'o. But if it just looks at the way the nation's going, a lot of the nation, if you listen to the media, they're loving Johnny Football. They're loving Johnny Manziel from Texas A&M. So if you're thinking overall, who do I think's going to win? I think Johnny Manziel will win the Heisman Award. But if I were a Heisman voter, I'd personally be putting my vote towards Monte Te'o. But just the fact that media does seem to influence a lot of things this now day and age. Yeah. And so I think Johnny Football will win the Heisman. But even though my vote, if I was a Heisman voter, would be going towards Monte Te'o.
Same here. Oh, man. Te'o's a beast.
Yes, he is a beast. And look out, Alabama. Alabama's got a pretty good offensive line, or Georgia. whichever team gets to face Monte Teo in the national title game, as we at least are projected to one of those teams play Notre Dame in the national title game. You better watch out. Monte Teo is an absolute monster on that defensive line for Notre Dame. And now we're going to get into the championship games. We got all the conference title games happening, as we saw the Big East. Wasn't a title game, but it definitely, a lot of things having to happen to see who's the Big East title member, who's the champion. As Louisville beat Rutgers last night, 20-17, and really thought, the Cincinnati gets also playing this weekend. So, a lot of things. It's one of those confusing things where this team's got to win, this team's got to lose, so on and so forth. But, so with that, and we got, to me, a lot of people wouldn't say it's that big of a title game, but the MAC conference title between Northern Illinois and Kent State, both ranked in the BCS standing, Northern Illinois being at number 21, Kent State being in the 17. Reason I have this being a big game is because of the non-AQ, non-automatic qualifying conference, as a team to make a BCS bowl. As if the winner of this game, I think Kent State has a better shot of getting this if they win, just the fact they're closer to 16. But if there's a non-AQ team, non-automatic qualifying conference team, highest ranked is lower than 16, they get an automatic BCS bowl bid. So if the highest ranked non-AQ team is ranked lower than 16, they do get a BCS bowl bid, and that's going to play a huge role in tonight's game. A lot of people wouldn't pay attention to this game in recent years, but to me this plays a big role. And who do you got winning this game, Chelsey?
Oh man, both teams are really good. It's for who's playing? I'm sorry.
It's Northern Illinois and Kent State.
Okay, Kent State. I'm feeling Kent State. I really am, because Kent State, even though they had a rocky start within certain parts of the games, their games within the season, they have this, I think it's either the coach or just defensive coach or offensive coach, but it's how they just perform is something that's really just going to make either Illinois an upset or just make them, okay, we beat you, but okay, you're still in the back of our minds. And if we play you next year, we're going to dog you. It's going to be like that. Because Illinois, even though they're a high-ranked team and their win could just, help them out within a bowl, it's certain players in there is just really need to, hone in on, their key elements. Because they didn't give up a whole lot of fumbles, but a couple interceptions in a couple of games. So, yeah.
You got Kent State as your pick. I'm going to have to go with Northern Illinois in my pick. Northern Illinois has been really in the mix. They to me, I've heard their name a lot recently. You don't hear a lot of names from the MAC in general. You don't hear a lot of names coming out of that conference in a BCS bowl. The teams we've seen in the past years from these non-AQ conferences in BCS bowls are at least competitive teams that are usually pretty competitive. Boise State, TCU, Hawaii was competitive a few years back. Fresno was competitive a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
So not your typical teams that you're hearing of getting to a BCS bowl from these non-AQ conferences. So, but I'm going to have to go with Northern Illinois. I've heard their name a lot recently. I just love the way they're playing. Their defense is great. Their offense is great. I love the way their quarterback plays. I have the Huskies in this game. I can't give you a score. I'm not going to
give a score either, personally.
I'm personally, when it comes to scores, I really, it just comes down to a lot, and I just see Northern Illinois winning. But, if you want to stay in the non-AQ, before we get to the other conference games, this game also is going to play a big role in the AQ into a BCS bowl, whether or not. And it's Boise State and Nevada. Boise State right now is currently ranked at 20, Northern Illinois 21, and Kent State at 17. If Kent State wins, I think they're an automatic push over, because unless they barely win or they look horrible, they somehow pull out the win, then they might stay at 17. But all they got to do is get to 16 and be the highest ranked non-AQ team to get a BCS bowl. But Boise State, as they take on University of Nevada Reno this weekend, that's going to play a big role, because if Boise State can make a huge statement win over Nevada Reno, and it's not really if Northern Illinois wins, I say if Northern Illinois wins and Boise State makes a statement win, then they'll move up to highest ranked. I don't know if they'll get all the way to 16. That's, really decides on the computers, and we all know how these computers are. A lot of people don't like the way these computers work.
Me personally, no.
Yeah, so I think this Boise State game is also going to play a big role. I see Boise State winning. I don't know if they could put up a statement win, but if they do, this is really going to shake up the way the Bulls are bound. But let's get back to the championship talk. We got Stanford and UCLA playing across the bay in Palo Alto today, later today. Who do you got?
Stanford. That's just like UCLA, they're crazy good this year, and it's really good to see because after they take out the coach, you get better. So I'm happy to see that. But for Stanford, those 3 defensive linemen, they're horrible. Like, they're scary good. So just to see them go up against UCLA's quarterback, can the offensive line hold those 3? Can they stop all that pressure? Same within Stanford's offense. Can they stop the pressure? But I mostly see Stanford pulling this one out because it's home field advantage, and it's just something about that grass. Something about that grass because a lot of teams, they slip off the grass and something happens, fumbles, just crazy stuff happens because there's a lot of good games in Stanford where just elements are the factors. So I kind of give, it's not going to be a blowout. It's going to be a good game. But I really feel Stanford on that one.
I'm going to have to go with Stanford also. They just played last week in L.A., at the Rose Bowl. And, Stanford pounded all over UCLA. And I can see that happening again. The elements are going to change a little bit. As we can see, before we came in here, it's raining in this area. And we are fairly close to Palo Alto. So it's probably raining over there too as we speak. Mm-hmm. So the elements could be a factor in this. But I still Stanford seen pretty much walking over UCLA as they did last week. That defense is scary good this year. Mm-hmm. Now over to tomorrow's games. You got the Big Ten title game. You got the Wisconsin Badgers versus the Nebraska Huskers. And, Ohio State deserves to be in this game. They're undefeated. They have these probation problems, just like USC was going through. They had a wonderful season, and, they don't get a bowl. They don't get one of these minor bowls or nothing. Mm-hmm. They don't get to go to the Big Ten title game. And personally, they'd be there, and they'd probably win, as they beat Nebraska earlier this year. So, I really, personally, I want to say Ohio State is the Big Ten champion, as they should be, but they got these probation problems. But who do you got, Nebraska, Wisconsin?
Nebraska, Wisconsin. That's going to be a good one. I really feel because Nebraska and Wisconsin have something to prove. For Nebraska, it's something internal within themselves, like all this stuff. Wisconsin, they're like, okay, we get all this bad rep within us, but we're a good team. So for that, it's going to be a good game. I'm not going to say a whole thing, but it could be a field goal. But I might go with Wisconsin.
I'm going to have to go with Nebraska here in my pick. Nebraska, they got a little bit of turnover issues, and I love the way Monty Ball plays. He's going to be the best running back that goes into the NFL draft next year. He's already set the record for most touchdowns in a career by a running back, as he did that last week. And, I love the way he plays. This Nebraska team is really good this year. They're 10-2. They're going to cause a big problem for Wisconsin. As long as Nebraska doesn't turn the ball over, they've seen to have a little bit of turnover issues in their recent games. So as long as they keep that problem fixed, I got Nebraska winning this game.
Yeah. I could see that, but for Wisconsin, it's just you had Russell Wilson, and he's doing work at the Seattle Seahawks and all that, and so just to see a couple of losses within their season, but those critical wins, they can get it done. They're not all bad. I really feel Wisconsin though, but I feel it.
Yeah, all right. So now we go to the big game. This game is obviously one of the biggest games of the season, probably other than the national title game. Number 2, Alabama, and number 3, Georgia. The winner at least projected to play Notre Dame in the national title game January 7th in Miami. So, this is obviously the biggest game of the year. If anything happens where even the winner does not play Notre Dame, the only way I can see this happening is if the game's just not a good game, both teams look bad, and somehow Florida jumps over both of them. But I really don't see this happening. I don't see it happening at all. Who do you got, Georgia, Alabama?
Gosh. How about them Bulldogs? That's all, that's all I can say. It's like, I feel Alabama, I know they can win. I know they can, but I'm going to put love on Georgia because it's like throughout the season they've been doing things that's just out of the ordinary. They lost to South Carolina. Why South Carolina? Why the Gamecocks? Out of all teams, the Gamecocks. But they lose within them, but like even with that loss, it's like they're still hungry. And so the fact that they're this close, I feel like they're not going to give it up regardless. It's Alabama. Like even though Alabama, already went over the mountaintop, Georgia's a little bit more hungry. I feel Georgia.
Yeah, you got a good point there. I'd love to see Georgia win. I personally am not a big fan of teams that keep winning and winning and winning. As obviously we've seen that with Alabama over the past few years. And, Georgia, with that loss to South Carolina earlier this year, and a pretty bad loss at that. It's not like it was a close game, field goal to end the game or something. They lost by 4 touchdowns. A lot of people after that counted the Bulldogs out. They're all, South Carolina's for real. Georgia's not who we thought they were. And, I think it was just that one game. Everyone has that one game. It's going to happen to them. Obviously, they probably wouldn't have wanted to have that one game be a blowout. As Alabama, we saw them with that one game. Wasn't a blowout as they lost to Texas A&M. But, I'm going to have to go with Georgia, too. I really think Georgia can pull this out. They got that star linebacker, Jarvis Jones, in the defense. Aaron Murray, their quarterback, is a really good quarterback. He'll probably be a top prospect going into the NFL draft, quarterback-wise at least. I really think, if Georgia can just get the running game going, that's going to be a big factor because if they can get their running game going, then it can really open up things for Aaron Murray and the passing game.
Oh, yeah.
And, I really think if they can do that, they can beat Alabama. And, Alabama, I still think there's some emotion tied to that Texas A&M loss. Georgia, yeah, they lost to South Carolina, but that was way back at the beginning of the season, 4 or 5 games in. So I personally, I can still see Alabama pulling off. It's not like I'm outright saying Georgia, Georgia's going to win this game. But, it's time for picking. And I got to go with Georgia for this.
Yeah, because Alabama, they have all the key elements. So it's like it doesn't really feel like they're not going to lose. But it's like you want a good game. So I'm not really going to say anything within the score. It's going to be a dog fight, between dogs and elephants, but I hope something comes out of it.
Yeah, also this probably also plays a key factor in it too. Yeah, it's not played in Athens, Georgia, but it is played in Atlanta, Georgia. The SEC title game always played there. You can also throw in some a little bit of maybe a home field advantage for Georgia there. They played there last year and got pummeled by LSU, but that's just a completely different team than it is this year. So, you can also throw that in the mix with Georgia having the home field. I guess you can say somewhat of a home field advantage. Throw that in there. That'll also play a key factor in this too. But both of us picking Georgia to win the SEC title game. And now we're going to end the show. If both of us have Georgia winning the SEC title game, that means both of us at least projected. This is probably what's going to happen, at least if Georgia or Alabama wins. But for both of us, we picked Georgia to win. Notre Dame, Georgia, January 7th in Miami. Who's winning the national title this year?
Field goal. No, it's going to go into a double overtime. That's what I hope. I pray it goes into a double overtime. And, Georgia, they don't give up. They miss a field goal by an inch. And Notre Dame takes the win. I don't like Notre Dame, but I want to see Te'o win. If he can't win the Heisman, I want him to win something. So he can have, those better prospects and be the first-round pick. So just for him, I'm going to give you the win for that one. But
this national title game, it's going to be a really good game whether either Alabama or Georgia goes into the national title game. And personally, I think the winner of the SEC title game wins the national title. I'm gonna go with Georgia. Since I picked them to win the SEC title game, I'm gonna have to go with Georgia over Notre Dame. Just with the fact that Notre Dame, they faced Oklahoma and USC. USC also without their starting quarterback in Matt Barkley. They really haven't faced a star-studded offense, a really good offense. A team with a really good defense. They haven't faced a combination of both. Georgia's got a really good offense along with a very good defense. And with Jarvis Jones, also, some people would, contemplate, whether is he the best defensive player in the country or is Monte Te'o the best defensive player in the country. And, personally, I got Georgia winning over Notre Dame. Yeah, it'd be nice to see Notre Dame win as this is the first time they've been ranked number 1 since the BCS came out a good 10 or so years ago.
Oof, that's long.
So, and they really haven't been successful for a while. Yeah, they went to a BCS bowl a good maybe 6 or 7 years ago. But it'd be a feel-good story, but I have at least the winner of the SEC title game, but I see it being Georgia winning the national title this year for this season. And that's going to do it today, folks, for Garrett, Talbert, and my partner, Chelsey Williams. This is College Football Weekly, broadcasting from the Solano College Sport Network studio.